Hello and welcome to Revision and Proofreading. What's the difference between the two, and how do you get them done? Whenever you complete your first draft of a piece of writing, you should have a feeling of accomplishment. You've successfully taken the thoughts and ideas from inside your head and you've put them down outside of your head. Nice work. Young writers often think that that's when they're done and they can move on to other things. But that's where they couldn't be more wrong. Your next task after writing your first draft is to revise and proofread your work. Nobody writes a perfect first draft. You've made mistakes. You've left things out. There are good parts, but there are probably some sentences that could use some work. Let's explore some ways to make this average piece of writing even better. When you started writing in the first place, you had a task in mind, whether your teacher gave it to you or whether it was uniquely yours. You had something you wanted to tell your reader. Well, did you do it? Were you entirely successful? Did you maybe leave any part of your ideas out of the first draft by mistake? You might have, and you won't know it until you reread it and revise it. One of the best ways to do this is to read the piece of writing aloud to yourself in a kind of proof hearing so that your ears can hear what your eyes can't see. If you have technology with text-to-speech software, you can easily have your machine read your writing aloud to you. Either way, be ready to think about the following ideas. Revision deals with the big picture, and it deals with ideas. Did you use a nonfiction text structure to help you organize your writing, such as compare and contrast, problem and solution, or description and list? If not, should you have? Read for the big picture, and try to see your writing as a reader would see it. Does your information seem logically presented, or did you kind of put one idea right after another with no particular order or reason? Does it flow naturally, or does it seem choppy to you? Is there anything missing? As you read or listen, think about what the reader is going to receive in their mind when they read it. The best place to start is the beginning. Did you properly introduce your topic to the reader so that they actually want to keep reading? Or did you make the common mistake that so many emerging writers make and just jump right in without any introduction whatsoever? If you don't have an introduction, think about making one. Sharpening your introduction and thesis statement is essential. It sets the stage for the rest of your writing. It should be clear from the beginning what your paper or writing will cover. Did you follow through on your promise? Did you talk about what you said you were going to talk about later in your text? Revision deals with ideas, and details are ideas. Do you have enough of them? Do you have too many? Did you write enough to satisfy the reader's interest and inform them completely? Did you give them enough information, or do you need to add more to make your point more clear to your reader? Also, consider if you added too much information. Sometimes you can write a lot of words that you don't need because they don't actually support the main idea. Eliminate those unnecessary details. Did you include anything that might throw the reader off or lead to confusion? Did you repeat yourself? Keep these things in mind when you are writing, because sometimes restating a point is effective, and sometimes repeating yourself gets a little boring. The conclusion. A lot of young writers do a pretty good job with a beginning and a middle, but they struggle with how to end their piece of writing. Sometimes they just stop, and that may be the worst thing you can do. You should purposefully write a conclusion that sums up your reason for writing in the first place. A good place to look for inspiration for your conclusion is actually your introduction. Reread your introduction and see if you can rewrite it in a way that reminds the reader what you wrote this for in the first place. Help the reader remember your writing by giving them something to take away with them in the final few sentences. And never, ever, ever end by saying, "That's all." Proofreading. What you've done so far is revision, which has to do with word choice and ideas and organization. But proofreading is where you work with the words and sentences on the paper, kind of where the rubber meets the road. Proofreading is where you fix the following common kinds of mistakes, like spelling, punctuation, grammar, paragraphing, and citations. And if you're typing, you should also think about line spacing and font size too. When you proofread, you should use a checklist. Your teacher will have one for you, and you can find lots of them online. Every checklist that you can find for proofreading will remind you what to look for as you read your own writing. If your work is printed or written, then use a different color pen or pencil to mark your changes so you don't miss any when you have to retype or rewrite it. If you've composed your work on a computer, you can just simply make the changes as you read. Make sure you do have a proofreading checklist to use, though. It's more than just spelling, and it's more than just making sure you have a period and the end and a capital letter at the beginning. Make sure to save your file after proofreading before closing it if you don't have autosave on your word processor. No writers complete great works alone. Most can't see the mistakes they always make. You know, the ones where you put the next to the. You just skip it with your eyes. You don't see it. And maybe there's a word that you simply don't know how to spell and constantly have been misspelling most of your life. You're going to need somebody else to point that out to you. You need help, and that's why all professional writers do peer editing. Most professional writers have a professional editor who does nothing but edit, but the rest of us have to find people in our lives who are pretty good at writing and can help us without hurting our feelings. One or more other people reading and reviewing your work can help you turn a C paper into an A paper. So you got to make sure you find some fellow writers in your neighborhood that you can trust and share your work with, and make sure you help those people too. While they're reading your writing, you should be reading theirs. And if your writing is written or printed, give them a good copy to read and comment on. And if you use something like Google Docs to compose your writing, share it with them and use the suggest function or the comment button. Remember, make comments on their writing only. Tell them what you think, but don't actually fix it for them. They need to fix it so that they know the mistakes they make. Don't rewrite their paper for them. That's a big mistake. Instead, tell them what you think and let them make the final decision. Now that you've reviewed how to revise and proofread, remember to do it. One of the worst things you can do is think you're done. You're not done until you've checked it a few times and until some other living human being with a mind has checked it too, so that they can comment upon it and so that you can have had a preview audience. Remember, we write for an audience, unless we're writing a diary. Everything we write is intended for somebody else to read. And your writing voice needs to be specific, clear, and concise. Thanks, and good luck.